What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. Now, today's first entitled parent story, if I'm honest, is actually quite a sad one. The person who's posted it is such a kind person, as you'll soon see. He's just a nice man working as a waiter, and he has a stutter. Unfortunately, on this one day, he has to deal with an entitled family who start laughing, getting angry at him, taking the mick out of his stutter, and it's just horrible to see. Let's see what happens. Entitled parent demands a different waiter because I stutter. About 2 years back, I worked as a waiter at a local restaurant. I was about 16 and, as mentioned, had a stutter. Add to that a Romanian accent on top, and I know a waiter probably wasn't my best option for a job. But the stutter didn't really cause many problems. Most people were very patient with me, and it never seemed to bother people, aside from a few every once in a while that seemed a little annoyed. But there was this one lady that made a huge scene out of it. She looked like the typical Karen, middle-aged blonde lady, and she had 3 children, all between 5 and 10. The typical, I want to speak to your manager lady. And funny enough, we'll come back to that. She came in with her kids and her husband and sat down at one of the tables that I was in charge of that night. I came over and asked if they'd like something to drink, stuttering on a word or two. Immediately, the torture begins. She gives me this confused, unimpressed look and no answer. This was my worst fear. I didn't want anyone to be mad at me for my stutter, so I just followed it with, "Sorry, I have a stutter." She said, "It's all right," in a pretty annoyed tone. They ordered their drinks, and she rolled her eyes in the end as the cherry on top. I went back to get a table or two and their drinks, but I couldn't get it out of my head. I tried to not let it bother me, but I always felt bad when I thought I was unconvincing a customer. And at the time, I thought that that's how people saw me, and that they were angry with me in their heads. For most of this story, I thought that I was in the wrong. That is mental. I came back with the drinks after stopping at those 2 tables, and it seemed the woman was also upset that I was taking a while, because as I was walking over, she said, "Finally." My heart was racing. I knew something bad was going to happen. We were about halfway through their order when one of the kids wanted macaroni. Problem was, his entitled mum said that last time he tried macaroni from this place, he didn't like it, so to get something else. He couldn't decide on something else, so she yanked out of his hands to order for him. She asked for chicken tenders, so I asked, 5 pieces or 3? 5 pieces, just whatever, just hurry. Of course, I was getting nervous, and that then made it harder for me to speak. So when I turned to the entitled dad, it took me even longer, and I was interrupted by the entitled mum. "Oh my god, can you please just go to your manager and get us a different waiter? Because we're starving and we don't want to wait half a year for something anybody else could do in 2 minutes. The entitled dad added to my misery. "Why would you even become a waiter if you can't speak?" he says, letting out an annoyed laugh, shaking his head. I had no idea how to respond. I was lost for words and I felt like just leaving. But again, I thought this was all my problem, so I told them I'd see what I could do. That is the horrible thing about this. People like these entitled people making an innocent waiter who has a stutter feel bad about his stutter that he can do nothing about. It's just disgusting. So I went to the manager and told him about it. He seemed pretty confused, but said he was too busy to do anything, and told me to see if one of my co-workers could take care of it. I went to my friend Dan, another waiter, and told him that one of my tables asked for a different waiter. He looked just as confused and said he couldn't do that at the moment because he was already working on 6 tables. He told me that if they're really that upset, they'll just leave. I tried going to the only other worker that day, other than the cooks, but he was walking out the door when I saw him. I didn't know what to do, so I just took a few seconds to work up the courage to go over and tell them we couldn't do anything. As soon as the entitled dad saw me walking over, he let out a frustrated, "Oh my god." I told them we were a little busy and that I was the only waiter available. The entitled mum told me quite quickly to bring over my manager. I went in and told him they wanted to talk to him, and he got up and I followed. I just stood there as my manager, Mr. Carlson, asked them, "Is there a problem?" "Yes, your worker here, he's taking forever and seems like he doesn't even care about it. We can barely understand him." "Well, what has he been doing?" "He's taking forever, and now he says he won't bring us a new waiter or even just speed it up a little. He doesn't even care about us." Well, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you want me to do. It's pretty busy today. We're just trying to make sure everyone gets their food. Gets their food, says the entitled dad. At this rate, we should have cooked our own legs and it would have been quicker. Yeah, why would you have a worker like that out on a busy day like this? I'm sorry, there's just not much we can do, said my manager. What you should do is get us a different waiter, a normal one. As I said, we're very busy. I can't do anything here. All the waiters are working right now. Oh, this is ridiculous. What kind of a business makes their customers wait half an hour for food because the waiter doesn't know how to speak? Mr. Carson turned to me and tells me to wait in the kitchen. I grab some dishes left over from a nearby table and take them back with me. I didn't get the rest of that conversation. After I set the dishes in the sink, I walked to the back where nobody else was and I just started crying. In my head, it was all my fault. I thought I was going to get fired and I felt horrible. Dan overheard me and came in to talk to me and give me a hug. When I went back outside, Mr. Carson and the entitled parents were arguing and Mr. Carson was telling them to leave. I started wiping down the table I just grabbed dishes from and caught them just at the right time to see them leave. Mr. Carson told them that he was going to call the police if they didn't go, and they finally got up and started to head out. The entitled mum, though, told me on her way out, "You need to go get a job you can actually do." It cracked me again and I started bawling. I couldn't even speak or even think. Mr. Carson gave me a hug and told me I could go home. I immediately went to my car and ended the day. I just couldn't stop crying when I got home. I felt like quitting, but I stayed there for another 2 months, I believe. Luckily, nothing ever came up as bad as that again. Now that I'm older, I realize just how awful these two were being, and that I was not at fault there. I don't think anyone should be treated like they were treating me. Yeah, listen guys, as I said halfway through that story, the saddest part about that entire event is that OP actually thought it was his fault that he had a stutter. Just horrible to hear. Look, ultimately, you are going to get some horrible people on the earth. It just happens, unfortunately. I'd love it if it wasn't like that, but you know, it is. But it's when they start negatively affecting the nice people like OP and making them question themselves as a person and thinking that it's their own fault that they have a stutter, making them feel bad about it. That is when it's just way, way, way too far. That is horrible. Tell you what, it's good that your manager stood up for you. I was worried there for a second that no one really seemed to be helping you at your office, and I was thinking, please don't let this poor man deal with this on his own. But thankfully, you had your colleagues to help you and make you understand that it's not your fault. And thankfully, again, OP has said at the end, he now realizes that having a stutter, it's obvious for me to say looking from the outside, but having a stutter is not his fault. It's just, you know, something that he was born with. Oh, man. Entitled people. Terrible. Now moving on to our second story. Entitled parent asks where my handler is. I'm in a wheelchair and then tries to grab my chair and wheel me off. So, I have to start with some context. I am a 25-year-old female and a full-time wheelchair user due to a rare condition. This condition makes my legs extremely painful from the knees and down. So painful that even if wind or rain touches my skin, I want to cry. Rain feels like 1,000 needles pricking my skin all at once. Oh my god. Another thing is that I can't feel the cold very well. This is important for later. Due to the extreme pain, I'm therefore not able to wear shoes, socks, or anything covering my legs. I have to wear shorts all year round. I'm originally from Norway, but I currently live in South England. So the winter in England is nothing compared to what I'm used to. Yeah, that's for sure. I'm from the south of England and I have been to Norway, can confirm. Anyway, now onto the story. This all happened at some point during the winter of 2019. I'm very independent and I do all my shopping and errands by myself. I needed some new winter clothes and went off to the nice cheap retail shop in England. If anyone wants to know. Primark, okay. I'm listening to my music with my headset on and I'm not really paying any attention to the people around me. Another thing to note is that literally everyone stares at me. I've seen multiple people walk into things, walls, pillars, etc., just because it's so strange to see someone in a wheelchair with no shoes. Now, I have gotten used to this as I've been in a wheelchair for about 10 years now, so I'm used to people staring and constantly asking me if I'm cold. Most days, I've got no issue ignoring these entitled people, but this one lady stood out. I was looking at a jumper when I saw a nice child looking at me. He was maybe 4 or 5 years old. Now, I understand that for small children, it can be a bit strange to see someone in a wheelchair, so I'm always happy for them to ask questions, and they're happy with simple answers. Most kids are genuinely trying to understand and learn. They're not being nosy or rude as most adults are. So the kid asked, "What happened to you?" "My legs hurt and now I can't walk on them." "Oh, is that why you're not wearing shoes?" "Yes." And then the kid just runs away smiling, and I'm thinking he's happy with the answers I gave him. About 5 minutes later though, someone pokes me in the back. I turn around to see a lady trying to get my attention. I turn my music off to see what this is all about when I see that same nice kid behind her. The conversation goes something like this. "My son is saying you're not wearing shoes during winter because your legs hurt. Well, you must be freezing. You can't be dressed like that during winter." Yeah, he asked why I was in a wheelchair, and I answered him, and he seemed happy with what I said. Look, it's okay, I'm Norwegian, plus I can't really feel the cold, and today isn't even that bad. I also have a condition that makes it impossible for me to wear shoes. As you can tell, I'm trying to be nice to get her to go away from me. A lot of times, people leave me alone once I answer a question or two. "But you can't be in this shop and not wear shoes or more clothes. It's setting a bad example for my child, and he's gonna think it's okay to not wear shoes. This is unacceptable." Well, I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do about that. I'm about to roll away when she steps in front of me. "I have never heard of any condition that would cause that. You must be lying." Yes, lady, it would make complete sense for someone in a wheelchair in the winter with no real clothes on their bottom half to be lying about that. But seriously, guys, what the heck? No, I'm not. And it's none of your business how I'm dressed or what's wrong with my legs. "You can't speak to me like that. Where's your handler? They can't just leave you alone, dressed like this in the shop. How are you supposed to get home? I need to complain to this handler that they are not taking care of you properly." It's so funny that this Karen genuinely thinks she's being a help here. She's like, "I'm gonna help you and get your handler and tell you what's wrong." You know, like, it makes no sense. Keep yourself to yourself. "Excuse me? I'm here on my own, and what you just said was extremely rude. Even if I had someone helping me, they're not my handler. You don't get to tell me what I can call people, helping people like you. Either way, you need to tell me where they are right now." Poor kid. He's currently trying to pull his mum away. I feel bad, so I come up with an idea. Yeah, well, I think my handler is upstairs. They're in a red shirt, wearing a blue hat." "Fine, I'll just have to find your handler and they'll deal with you." She's smiling like this handler is going to punish me or something. It was super creepy and weird. "It's so unprofessional to leave someone like you all alone. Never mind not dressing you properly. They should be fired." Then the entitled parent tries to grab my chair and take me with her. I shouted at her to get her hands off me and put my brakes on. Then a nice retail worker comes over to see what's happening. And before I can explain, the Karen shrieks over me that the worker has to look after her son while she's getting my useless handler. Then she walks off, leaving the kid with us. I quickly explain what actually happened and that I just want to leave without confronting her again. The worker tells me that she will handle it and look after the kid until the mum gets back. The nice kid actually seems really sad, so I make sure to tell him that I'm not angry at him for asking questions or anything else. This seems to brighten him up a little bit. A bit of a boring ending, but I still can't believe someone asked me where my handler was. The entitlement of some people. Guys, other than OP, the person that I really feel bad for in this story is the kid, because he's now going to think that he shouldn't be asking questions. He shouldn't be curious because his mum got angry at him for it. Or, you know, it led to a bad situation in which his mum started shouting. Ultimately, if you have a kid yourself, you probably want them to be curious, right? It's a really good trait to have. But, you know, even in this situation, OP completely understands that he's just a 4 to 5-year-old kid questioning the world, questioning something slightly different, and then that's absolutely fine. But the fact that his mum has just started this whole, you know, drama because of him asking a question might make him think twice about that in the future. And it might, you know, make him go into his shell and be really quiet, which is not really what we want. Ideally, you want to be asking questions, learning about the world, being a bright little kid. But unfortunately, that might not happen in future. Pretty much, I just think that if this kid is now not going to express himself because of his horrible mother and, you know, her just shouting over him whenever that happens, that is just such a loss to the world. To be fair though, like, this mum, despite the fact that she thinks, and I actually think she actually does think that she's trying to help here and that she is helping by going to get a handler, I genuinely do believe she's that idiotic that she is genuinely thinking that she's helping. She's ultimately ableist because she's saying to OP, who's in a wheelchair, that in her opinion, she does not think that she is capable of going out, living on her own, being independent. That is pretty much what she's saying, right? By saying, no, your handler must be somewhere. No, OP can be in a wheelchair and be absolutely fine on their own. Obviously, it's just ableist. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this one. Really hope you enjoyed it. A couple of more deep stories, I would say. Slightly sadder stories than normal. Less funny, more just, wow, really? These people actually do exist. What a shame. If you want something more comical, a little bit more lighthearted, check out this video on the screen right here. That's a funny one. If you are new to the channel, subscribe up here, and I will see you all tomorrow with a brand new video. Have a good one, guys.